In the Civil War, as the Union fought against the Confederacy, the country's very survival was in doubt. And throughout the war, it was President Lincoln's ultimate goal to save the Union. However, he is most known for doing something entirely different, freeing the slaves. But for the first half of the war, he refused to do so. So why after 2 years did he finally issue his Emancipation Proclamation? Well, that's the treasure we're out to discover. I'm Dan Luer, and this is History for Little Humans. And before we jump into it, I just want to let teachers and homeschool parents know that there are lesson plans that go with this episode on my site, and there are direct links below to ensure that your students are properly equipped to wrestle with this history. So, young historians, our exploration question for today's episode is, why did President Lincoln issue the Emancipation Proclamation, and how did it change America? So think about the causes of it and the effects as we go through the lesson. The Civil War was caused by several things: states' rights, westward expansion, but most importantly, slavery. But when the Civil War began in April of 1861, Lincoln made clear that his overall goal was to save the Union and that he wouldn't interfere with slavery. Even though he believed slavery was morally wrong, he believed it was more important that the Union win the war to reunite the nation. If the Union lost, it would show the world that democracies cannot work, which he thought would be worse. But early on, the war was not going well for Lincoln or the Union. Confederates were winning key battles while tens of thousands of Union men were dying. Not good. People in the North became critical of Lincoln's leadership. Abolitionists like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Beecher Stowe pushed the president to abolish slavery. Others, however, including his cabinet members who are like his advisors, believed that freeing the slaves was too risky and could lead to defeat. But after one key victory on the battlefield, Lincoln was finally convinced to put pen to paper and write out words that would not only change the fate of the war, but the fate and future of America. It was after the Union victory at the Battle of Antietam that Lincoln announced his Emancipation Proclamation. It stated that on January 1st, 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state in rebellion against the United States shall be thenceforward and forever free. Abolitionists across the North rejoiced. Some wept tears of joy, and free black people across the country celebrated. It was a revolutionary moment in American and world history. Lincoln believed if he was going to be remembered, it would be for this, and that is why he is known as the Great Emancipator. But the Emancipation Proclamation did not just free enslaved peoples, it helped the Union win the war. First off, it hurt the South by depriving them of their workforce since enslaved peoples did much of their labor. Also, the Emancipation Proclamation would allow black men to fight in the Union Army. Desperate to prove their courage and patriotism, nearly 200,000 black men volunteered to fight. They brought new energy that would soon overwhelm the Confederacy. And for many in the North, the Emancipation Proclamation gave them a moral boost. Not only were they fighting to save their country, but they were fighting to spread liberty to 4 million enslaved people. And that brings us to our quiz flash from the past. So Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation went into effect on January 1st of 1863. But when do you guess the last Confederate slaves were freed? January 2nd, 1863, December 27th, 1863, March 14th, 1864, or June 19th, 1865? If you guessed June 19th, 1865, you're right. And this was actually after the war was over, when Union troops freed enslaved people in Galveston, Texas on June 19th, the last of the Confederate slaves were freed. This event is celebrated as Juneteenth, now a national holiday. And you might be wondering, why were they freed after the war? Why did it take so long? Because the Emancipation Proclamation actually didn't free all enslaved peoples, at least not right away. What's confusing about the Civil War is that there were 5 states that had slavery but that fought on the side of the Union and who did not join the Confederacy. These were known as the border states. Since these border states still had slaves but sided with the Union, Lincoln could not afford to lose them, and he feared that if he freed their slaves, they would join the Confederacy. Therefore, when he issued his Emancipation Proclamation, it did not free the enslaved peoples in the border states. But wait, it's even more complicated than that. You see, all the enslaved peoples that Lincoln ordered to be freed were not under his control. And the ones he did control, he chose not to free. What? Confederate leaders were not just going to end slavery because Lincoln told them to. Still yet, as the Union Army entered southern towns, news spread quickly to the enslaved peoples about the Emancipation Proclamation. Hundreds of thousands escaped to their freedom. Little by little, slavery was coming to an end. And after the war, the 13th Amendment was passed that forever banned slavery in America. When the war was over, so too was slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation changed the purpose of the Civil War. It was not only to save the Union, but to break the chains of slavery. As Lincoln stated, the war gave the country a new birth of freedom. And though Black people in America would continue to face serious discrimination and challenges in the decades ahead, slavery was a thing of the past. And remember that history is a light that guides us forward. So thanks for learning some today. This has been History for Little Humans. And hey, before you go, if you liked this episode and learned a thing or two, could you hit the thumb that looks like this? And students, could you annoy your teachers until they hit the subscribe button? It would really mean a lot to me and I give you permission. Thanks, I'll catch you next time.